It is time for our national town hall meeting with the guy I think of as America's senator, although the people of Vermont know he's theirs. The independent from Vermont, Senator Bernie Sanders. Bernie, welcome back. He's not ready? He is ready? He's not ready. Oh.
I'm on the... Hello?
Hey, Bernie, yeah, I hear you now.
Okay.
Okay, great. So, welcome to the program.
Good to be with you.
The fiscal cliff is looming as Senator McConnell is filibustering himself. Strange things going on in the Senate.
Well, we have two separate issues with the fiscal cliff and we have the debt ceiling. But to some degree they are significantly related. So let me just try to keep people informed about the issues that are going on. I think most people understand that we're in the deficit fix that we're in right now because of two unpaid wars, tax breaks for the rich, and unpaid for Medicare Part D prescription drug program, and very importantly, a significant decline in revenue because of the Wall Street caused recession. When people lose their jobs, millions of people lost their jobs, they're not paying taxes, revenue is going down. And in fact, they're getting food stamps, they're getting unemployment benefit. So the government is hurting as a result of that. We're in a situation now where there is an agreement that when you have a $16 trillion national debt and a $1 trillion deficit, we need deficit reduction. And obviously, what this whole fiscal cliff is about is how do you do deficit reduction? Our Republican friends, as usual, want to continue their attacks against working families, the elderly, the sick, the children, the poor. And they come up with proposals like cutting Social Security. Well, that's a pretty dumb proposal because Social Security hasn't contributed one nickel to the deficit because it's funded by the payroll tax. But they like cutting Social Security because they don't like government. They don't like government programs that work well like Social Security. And there's another brilliant idea out there that says, well, let's raise the Medicare retirement age, Medicare eligibility age to 67 years of age. Well, what that means is there'll be a 2-year gap between 65 or 67 where a whole lot of seniors who are in desperate need of health care, you start running into health care problems when you get old, are not going to have it. B, some of those folks may turn to Medicaid, which is another government program, just shifting costs. C, they may have to get private insurance, which is much more expensive for the system in general and for themselves because Medicare is more efficient than private health insurance. But that is something that should be vigorously opposed. There's another proposal which Republicans and some Democrats have out there called the so-called chain CPI. Now, nobody outside of the Beltway has a clue what the chain CPI is, but it's a very devious way being pushed by Pete Peterson and other billionaires out there, Wall Street billionaires, to cut programs for working families. And what that does is says that the COLAs, the cost of living adjustments, that seniors and disabled veterans are getting are too high, and we've got to cut them back. Seniors laugh at this every time I mention it because they know that in the last 2 out of 3 years they didn't receive any cost of living adjustment at all. What this would mean if the chain CPI would go in, and that's a new way to configure inflation for seniors and disabled vets, it would mean if you're 65 today, by the time you're 75, you get $560 a year less. By the time you're 85, it's $1,000 a year less. And it will also mean very significant cuts for disabled veterans. And I cannot believe that there are very many people outside of Wall Street or the Republican Party who think it's a good idea to continue tax breaks for billionaires and cut benefits for disabled vets. The chain CPI approach would also result in a tax increase for low-income working people by making cuts in the earned income tax credit and the refundable child tax credit. So it's a very devious effort to cut programs and raise taxes for low-income working people, veterans, and seniors, and it's something we will vigorously oppose. The bottom line here, Tom, is historically the Republicans have shown themselves to be a lot tougher than the Democrats are. Mm-hmm. In 2010, despite the Democrats having some 58 or 59 senators and controlling the House of Representatives and controlling the White House, they made huge concessions to the Republicans, and they did that again in 2011. And I hope very much, frankly, I think the president is doing better now. He appears to be standing tough. But I hope the Democrats look at this election and look at every poll that's out there, which says that, yes, we should do deficit reduction, but we should do it in a way that asks the wealthy and large corporations to stop paying their fair share, take a hard look at military spending, but do not cut Social Security, Medicare, Medicaid, education, and other important programs. And if the Democrats hold firm on this issue and reflect what the overwhelming majority of the American people want, what will end up happening is the right thing in terms of a budget agreement, and I think the American people will feel pretty good about it.
Bernie, is the cut that would happen to disabled veterans if they put into place this chain CPI, which will over time cut benefits to Social Security recipients, is that because disabled veterans are receiving some of their benefits via Social Security, or is it? How does that work?
And then that's the short answer. Yes.
Okay.
According to, I'm just reading you some information. According to the Social Security Administration, permanently disabled veterans who started receiving VA disability benefits at age 30 would see their benefits cut by more than $1,300 a year at age 45, $1,800 a year at age 55, and $2,200 a year at age 65.
Wow.
Yeah. So, this is something that most people don't know about.
Yeah.
But what you got is the Wall Street billionaires and our Republican friends trying to obfuscate the issue. They get on television and say, we want entitlement reform. When you hear anyone say they want entitlement reform, what they are talking about is cuts in Social Security, cuts in Medicare, and cuts in benefits for disabled veterans. Yeah. So we have to make them speak English and be honest about what they want to do. And when people hear what they want to do, we're going to stop them.
Yeah, and that disabled veterans part, that, if the tables were turned, if the Democrats are trying to do this and the Republicans were yelling, they would be yelling so loud.
The uproar that Rush Limbaugh and Fox Television would be having?
Oh, yeah. It would be incredible. So we have Mitch McConnell filibustering himself. What are your thoughts? You've talked before about filibuster reform. How do you think this is going to play out?
Well, I don't know how it's going to play out. We're working hard on it. Here's the story. And a lot of people, the Senate is a very complicated institution, much too complicated. But it has all kinds of rules which make no sense to ordinary people, and they shouldn't because they are not sensible. But among other things, individual senators can put a hold, can say a bill is coming up, and they say, well, I'm going to put a hold on that bill. I want to filibuster this bill. And you don't have to go down on the floor and do anything. You have to threaten that, and that means that the majority needs what's called a cloture vote to get 60 votes to continue the debate. You can have a cloture vote on whether or not to even proceed to the matter at hand. So the question is, should we consider a bill to do A, B, and C? You can even cloture that, let alone cloture the bill itself. Wow. So the result of it is that since Obama has been president, Republicans have done this a whole lot. The Senate is largely dysfunctional. We have to change it. We need filibuster reform.
Yeah, amen. Senator Bernie Sanders with us. It's our Brunch with Bernie hour here on the Thom Hartmann Program. Check out Bernie's website at sanders.senate.gov. 15 minutes past, and Bernie.org. 15 minutes past the hour. We'll be right back. And welcome back. Thom Hartmann here with you. Senator Sanders on the line with us. It's our Brunch with Bernie segment. And Bernie is getting himself wired up here. Bernie, can you hear me?
Tom?
Yeah. Hey, this fancy stuff works. Okay, shall we take a... Bernie, can you hear me? Bernie's not hearing me. No.
Okay, Tom?
Yes, sir. Can you hear me now?
Hear me?
Yes, I hear you fine. Can you hear me?
Okay.
Okay, yep. This is like a bad Verizon ad, but okay, let's take a call here. Gary in Chicago, Illinois, watching on Free Speech TV. You're on the air with Senator Sanders.
restructure the filibuster because it was so damaging to the creditworthiness and purchasing power of the 98% should be cut. I mean, because of the Bush tax cuts. I mean, could something be done with that?
Okay.
You're talking about a couple of issues. Number one, yes, the Bush tax breaks should be ended for people making $250,000 a year or more. The Senate voted to do just that. And we would like the House to do that, but the Republican House has chosen, at this point at least, not to do that. We hope that they would. The issue about the debt ceiling is another issue, and that's going to come up within a couple of months. What that's about is, the United States of America is obliged to pay its bills. We spend money, and you got to pay your bills. And if we choose not to pay our bills by not raising the debt ceiling, what likely happens is that when the wealthiest and most powerful nation on earth essentially says, we're unable to pay our bills, we're bankrupt, this causes tremendous financial uncertainty throughout the entire world. It lowered last time around when the Republicans did this, or threatened to do this. It resulted in a degrading of U.S. securities, meaning higher interest rates, and we think that could happen all over the world. So it is a really dumb idea, and it's something that is, really strange that the Republicans are so persistent on, because it threatens the American economy and it threatens the world economy.
Yeah. I think this was put into law, in fact, during the Eisenhower era, after the big debts of World War II, or pushed by Republicans. But Bernie, just reality check this for me. My understanding is that raising the debt ceiling is not running up more bills on the credit card. It's authorizing Congress to pay down the credit card, to pay off the expenses
That's
on
right.
the credit card, as it
Tom,
were.
it is like your credit card.
Yeah.
I mean, that's what it is.
But it's paying it off. It's not buying more stuff. Only Congress
Precisely.
can buy stuff. The president can't. But they're accusing the president of wanting to buy more stuff.
No, your first point is right. If you owe money on your credit card, you owe that money. If you're the United States government and you don't pay what you owe, you're causing very serious financial problems all over the world when you're the largest and most powerful nation not paying your debts.
Right.
And you're right. In terms of occurring future debt or increasing revenue, that is exactly what's Congress's responsibility. All that we have to do right now is make sure we pay off what we owe.
Yeah, makes perfect sense. Thank you, Bernie. 19 minutes past the hour. Senator Bernie Sanders on the line with us with our Brunch with Bernie hour here on the Thom Hartmann Program. We'll be right back. Welcome back. It's our Brunch with Bernie hour. Senator Bernie Sanders taking your calls in our national town hall meeting. David in Greenbelt, Maryland. You are on the air with Senator Sanders.
Senator Sanders, a pleasure to speak to you once again. Question. Republicans insist that we have a spending problem, but from 1946 for 36 years, our top marginal tax rate was 91% and 70%. 36 years. My first question is, why does no Democrat reply with facts that we have a revenues collection problem, not a spending problem, and that taxes have never been so low? My second question is, has anyone ever done a study to determine exactly how much revenue was lost due to the low tax policies of Reagan, Bush, Clinton, Bush, Obama?
Well, the first point, David, is you're right. That point is not made enough, but some of us do make it very often. At the beginning of the show, I made that point. And here's what David is saying. While our Republican friends say, oh, the problem is that we're just spending, and we are spending, in the midst of this recession, a significant amount of money, what they forget to tell us is that revenue today, as a percentage of GDP, is somewhere around 15.6%, which is the lowest that it has been in 60 years. So if revenue were coming in at 21% of GDP, because we hadn't give tax breaks to the wealthiest people in this country and the largest corporations, our deficit situation would be in a very, very different place. So the issue is not such a spending issue. As David indicates, it is a revenue issue as well. What we do know is that the effective tax rates for the very wealthy are, as Warren Buffett often reminds us, very, very low. And that's why Mitt Romney, who's worth a couple of $100 million, chose not to release many of his tax returns. That's why. Because he would be embarrassed to show that his income tax rate was lower than that of teachers or firemen or cops or middle-class workers. The second point is, today as a percentage of revenue, corporate taxes are also extremely low. And what we know is that 1 out of 4 profitable corporations in America today doesn't pay a nickel in taxes. We know that we're losing about $100 billion every year from companies and individuals who stash their money in the Cayman Islands and other tax havens. So David's point is a very important point. You're right, David, not enough people talk about it, but some of us do.
Paul in South Lyon, Michigan. You're on the air with Senator Sanders.
Yeah, how you doing, Senator? It's a great honor to talk to you.
Thanks.
I want to get your opinion on this idiotic Republican talking point that we always hear, that tax cuts for multimillionaires stimulates the economy. I have a degree in economics, and my dad was a college professor of economics, and I know that that's the opposite of the truth. The only way to stimulate the economy is to raise taxes on multimillionaires, and the government uses that money to put people to work building bridges, roads, schools, hiring people to protect our food supply so we don't die from eating peanut butter or getting a steroid shot, things like that.
Well, Paul, I think you're right. You're exactly right. Look, what we are seeing and have seen for many years now, and I use this expression advisedly, is class warfare being waged by billionaires and the very wealthiest people in large corporations against working families. And we're seeing that in a number of ways. I mean, just in this last election, we had dozens of billionaires contributing huge amounts of money trying to defeat Obama and progressive Democrats. We have seen Wall Street and billionaires lobby like crazy to gain loopholes for themselves. They are able and they effectively can put their money in tax havens abroad. They have shut down plants in America that were profitable and they moved them to China. They have waged unrelentless war against unions and working families. That's what is going on right now. And they have to come up with some theory, ideology, which makes it sound like what they're doing makes sense, and that's called trickle-down economics. So they come up with this, what George Bush the first called voodoo economics, and that somehow, if you give tax breaks to billionaires, and if you give tax breaks to large corporations, magically, they're going to create jobs in the United States of America. Well, the record is very clear. We did that under Bush, George W. Bush. It was a disaster. His job creation record was an absolute disaster. Paul makes the better point, the right point, that if you put money into working people's hands, if you make sure that our people have jobs, that you don't cut things like unemployment benefits, that when working people have money, they're going to spend that money locally. They have to buy food. They have to buy furniture. They have to buy clothing for their kids. They put gas in the car and so forth and so on. And that is the way you create jobs, not by giving tax breaks to rich people through trickle-down economics.
Deborah in Oklahoma City. We just have a minute to the break. Deborah, a quick question?
Yes, I was wondering about the establishing of a National Election Commission that's nonpartisan, that draws the district line so that we get away from all of this gerrymandering, and whether or not, I know that like Australia does that in some other countries, and if we could maybe think about that here.
Well, Deborah, I think it's a good point. And I think we really need, gerrymandering is a real issue. and we have seen some, it's not a new idea. It's been going on for a few hundred years. And it's been used by both, all political parties. But I think it's becoming a little bit extreme lately. And I think it's, Deborah, if I can say so, it's not just gerrymandering. We have to take a hard look at why it is that it takes people in Florida 7, 8, 9 hours to cast their ballots, and other abuses that take place within our election system. So I think we do need to take a hard look at a lot of those election issues.
Senator Bernie Sanders with us for our National Town Hall Meeting Hour Brunch with Bernie. Senator Sanders will be back with more answers to your questions right after this break. Check out his website. His website is sanders.senate.gov. He has a great newsletter. He's got a lot of good news information there.
You're listening to the Thom Hartmann Program. Call 866-987-THOM.
And you can drop into our free live chat room over at thomhartmann.com. Hang out with some of the finest minds on earth. Welcome back to Talk Media for the rest of us, the Thom Hartmann Program. It's our Brunch with Bernie hour. Senator Bernie Sanders taking your calls for this hour and our National Town Hall Meeting. Bernie, a quick question before we move along. I just got a copy from a friend who owns one of the stations that we're on of a letter that you and nine senators altogether sent to Julius Genachowski. How is about media consolidation and this gift that they may be giving to Rupert Murdoch? How's that going?
Well, it's not just Rupert Murdoch. It's a gift that they may be giving to the large media conglomerates in this country. I think, Tom, many of the listeners are aware that in our country today you have a handful of giant media conglomerates, companies like General Electric, Murdoch's, News Corp, Disney, Viacom, Time Warner, and CBS. They control about 90% of the media in America. People think that they go to a magazine place and they're looking at many magazines. By and large, they're owned by a few companies. You turn on your cable television, you think you got dozens and dozens of stations, separate stations, independent stations. They're by and large owned by a few companies. Now, what happens is what the FCC said a number of years ago is that in a democracy, I'm paraphrasing, it's important that people get a diverse point of view, that they hear from different perspectives. And you can't do that when you have just a few companies controlling what people in a given community are going to receive in terms of television, radio, and newspaper information. What the FCC...
Okay.
Those rules allow for more media consolidation such that...
Bernie, if you can hear me...
one company, whether it's Murdoch's company or any other, could own
yeah, I can hear you.
Significant amounts of media, television stations, radio stations, newspaper in a given community, and really control the flow of information. And they're back to trying to do that, and some of us are trying to stop them.
Okay. Great. Thank you very much for clearing that up for me. Let's see here. Jimmy in Arkadelphia, Arkansas. Am I saying that right, Jimmy?
Yeah, you got it right.
You are on the air with Senator Sanders.
Oh, the question I have is about Medicaid and the Medicaid expansion that some of the states are going to reject, like Texas. Will those poor citizens of the states like that be able to take part in the exchanges and get fully subsidized?
Jimmy, you've asked a very, very important question. I think, Tom, we're having some problems here again.
Yeah, are we picking Bernie up through the phone or through the Comrex? We're on the Comrex, yeah, so you can just talk into the microphone, Bernie.
All right.
I think it's working.
Okay. Jimmy asked a very profound question, in that one of the important parts of so-called Obamacare, as Jimmy indicates, was to expand health insurance coverage to about 30 million Americans, primarily lower-income people who have no health insurance at all. And you do that through the expansion of Medicaid. And now you have governors in various states in the country say, we don't want it. We don't want it, even though in the first years the federal government is going to be paying 100% of the cost, and then in later years a significant part of the cost, not all of it. And to answer Jimmy's question, it is an absolute tragedy. And in Texas, actually, I think it's where the problem is most acute. You got a whole lot of folks in Texas who have no health insurance at all, and this Affordable Care Act, this expansion of Medicaid, would be a huge boon. Very, very important for a whole lot of folks in Texas. So all I can say to you, Jimmy, I don't know the answer to what happens to those people. But what I would hope the people of Texas do is organize and say, excuse me, we want our kids. We want our parents. We want to be able to go to the doctor when we are sick. We don't want to die prematurely because we don't have health insurance. So I think the goal should be in Texas and elsewhere is to start putting pressure on the governors and the legislatures to make sure that they do what the federal government now is allowing them to do, and that is to provide health care coverage for a significant number of people who otherwise would be without it.
Matt in Oakland Gardens, New York. You're on the air with Senator Sanders.
Hi. Can you hear me?
Yep.
Okay. Yeah, I had a question. National Nurses United, they're holding protests, I believe, on Monday to try to push for a Wall Street sales tax to try and, a financial transactions tax. I'm wondering if Senator Sanders, would you support that? Because I know you did in the past.
Yes, I have, I do, I will. I think it's a very significant step forward, and we're working with folks like Congressman Peter DeFazio of Oregon, Senator Thom Hartmann. We have a version we put in to our dental bill. We greatly expanded dental coverage, and one of the ways we paid for it is by a transaction fee on Wall Street. And we think it also, not only can it raise substantial sums of money, and by the way, Europe is looking at this, it can also put a damper on Wall Street speculation.
Mm-hmm. Okay. Let's see here. Laurel in Adrian, Minnesota. Laurel, you are on the air with Senator Sanders.
Yes. Hi, Bernie. Yeah, Tom, too. Thanks for taking my call. For the past 20 years, virtually my entire life, I've worked with individuals with special needs. I've seen firsthand the improvements in the lives of so many people the American Disabilities Act has given to these people. And to learn this week that the Senate actually turned down or defeated this UN treaty to, basically bring the ADA worldwide, I just find that so dispiriting and disheartening. I was wondering what your take on that was, knowing that 38 senators voted against this. This measure passed 20 years ago with bipartisan support. I don't know exactly who, but I know for a fact there are senators that were there 20 years ago that were voting for the ADA that turned it down now. It's just, I don't understand the motivation behind that.
Well, I'll tell you what it is about, Laurel. Thanks very much. And that was kind of a shocking occurrence. And if my memory is correct, if my understanding is correct, Senator Bob Dole, who everybody knows ran for president, was a Republican leader for many, many years, and Bob suffered very serious injuries in World War II, which caused problems with one of his hands. And Senator Dole was on the floor, as I understand it, during this vote. He is a strong supporter of this convention. The very first speech, as I understand it, that Dole gave way back when he first came to the Senate, was talking about disabilities. Obviously, as a wounded veteran, he understood what disabilities were about. So we had his very strong support. I think all of the Democrats voted for it. Some Republicans voted for it. We got over 60 votes, but you need 67 votes to pass the treaty. And I think the extreme right wing went to work with their right wing base. I think, amazingly enough, they somehow made this into an abortion issue. I can't explain it to you because it's beyond my comprehension. But I think it was a sad day that this treaty was defeated.
Okay. Ed, in Moundsville, West Virginia, you're on the air with Senator Sanders.
Yes, Senator, this is the first time I've ever got a chance to talk to you. I was just wondering why we can't somehow put a stop to these Republicans getting by with all this money, hush money and everything, and also too, why if the Republicans want to not have this stuff, then okay, let's split it and let the Democrats have what they want and the Republicans have what they want. I mean, if they want to be so, and then their people would find out what it's really all about. I was talking to my doctor yesterday, a brilliant man, and he totally doesn't know anything about free speech or these TV programs, and I think something needs to be done to get this out to people so that they'll understand what's really going on.
Well, Ed, thanks very much for the call. You know, Tom and I just a moment ago, Tom asked me about some work we're doing regarding the FCC, the Federal Communications Commission, in which we're trying to prevent these large media conglomerates from buying up more and more of media in America. And I think that Ed's point is that a lot of people don't know what's going on in government. They don't know what's going on in their society. I'll give you an example. Tom, I don't know if you saw this. There was a poll done recently in which something like, I think the number was 49% of Republicans think that Obama won this election because he stole it as a result of the work of Acorn.
Right, which hasn't existed for 2 years. Yeah, I saw that.
All right. You know, so you stop and you scratch your head and you say, here's an organization that doesn't even exist. And half of the Republicans think the election was stolen as a result of a work for an organization that doesn't exist. So you're wondering what world these folks are living in. Where are they getting their information? Every night there's going to be somebody getting on television and saying, Social Security, as we all know, Social Security is going broke. Well, we all don't know that Social Security is going broke because Social Security is not going broke. But that's common knowledge that keeps getting said over and over again that happens not to be true.
Very, very well said. Senator Bernie Sanders on the line with us. It's our Brunch with Bernie hour. Your opportunity to talk to a United States Senator and in our national town hall meeting here every Friday. Brunch with Bernie. Check out Bernie's website at sanders.senate.gov.
You're listening to the Thom Hartmann Program. Visit ThomHartmann.com for audio and video archives.
And we'll be back with more of your questions for Bernie right after this. And welcome back. Joan in Ludington, Michigan. You are on the air with Senator Sanders.
Oh, Bernie, once again I am confused. Excuse me. Are the Republicans just using the deficit as an excuse to weaken Social Security, or are they actually able to get their hands on our $2.7 trillion?
I think, Joan, thank you for the question. It's a good question. Many Republicans have never liked Social Security because philosophically they believe in very limited government. And if you ask them, do you think that government should play a role in providing retirement security or help for people with disabilities or widows and orphans, they will say, no, we don't believe government should do that. So they will use whatever opportunity they have to try to cut Social Security or eventually move to the privatization of Social Security. So right now, it's really a schizophrenic situation. Because on one hand, you have Simpson Bowles and all these other guys saying, yeah, we understand Social Security has nothing to do with the deficit, but we think we should cut Social Security. What does that mean? What are they talking about? So basically, Joan, I do believe that these guys basically want to cut Social Security because they know that it has been an enormously successful government program. They don't believe in government. They would rather have young workers invest on Wall Street, where they got a lot of campaign contributions from. And that's that. But your point is Social Security has a $2.7 trillion surplus, can pay out every benefit for the next 21 years with modest changes. Social Security will be there for the next 50, 75 years.
What do you think the odds are that the cap is going to be lifted, Senator?
Well, we're working. Here's what I think may happen. I am chairman of a caucus called the Defending Social Security Caucus, and what we have demanded and fought for is to take Social Security out of this deficit reduction discussion because it has nothing to do with the deficit. Now, I would not be opposed to a commission of some sort looking at how do we make Social Security strong, not just for the next 21 years, but for the next 75 years. And certainly, the major way you do that is by lifting the cap on taxable income so that people who are making $1 million a year do not continue to pay the same amount into Social Security as somebody making $110,000. I have legislation which has, I think, 9 co-sponsors to do just that. There's more support for that. And I think as we educate the American people, this is something that, in fact, we can win, Tom.
Okay, good. I'm very hopeful about that because it would take it off the table. It would clean it up. It seems like fundamental fairness. And President Obama campaigned on this. Welcome back. Tom Hartmann here with you and Senator Bernie Sanders on the line. It's our Brunch with Bernie hour. And Mark in Eugene, Oregon, you're on the air with Senator Sanders.
Yeah, hi, Senator. I'm calling about the upcoming physical cliff and the Postal Service being tied to that bill, or a bill about the Postal Service being tied to the physical cliff. What I mean is the life of the post office is in danger, Saturday delivery and such.
Hang on just a second, Mark. I got to get Bernie on the phone here.
You hear me?
Yeah, Bernie, I hear you fine now on the telephone.
Don't know what's going on here. We seem to be having some problems.
Yeah, I think we have a flaky line for the Comrex today. So
okay.
Anyhow, he was asking about the post office.
Yes.
Yeah. Okay.
It's an issue. He raises a very important issue. It's one that I've worked very hard on. Where we are right now is the Senate passed a bill, bipartisan bill. Wasn't great, wasn't as much as I wanted, but was reasonably good. And it protected rural post offices. It protected Saturday mail. It protected the distribution centers all over this country that the Postmaster General had originally wanted to make really significant cuts in. We believe there are ways to strengthen the Postal Service by bringing in more revenue rather than just decimating it. What's going on right now, what I can tell you, is there are discussions going on between the House and the Senate. The House has not passed anything. But the chairman of the relevant committee there really wants to decimate and ultimately privatize the Postal Service. So there are debates, there are negotiations going on now, and I hope this week to find out the status of these things. They make me nervous. The main point, people don't necessarily know this, the main reason for the Postal Service's financial problems have to do with the fact that in 2006, Congress mandated that they pay $5 billion a year into future health retiree benefits, an amount of money that nobody else in America has paid. And in fact, they pretty much covered the account. They don't need to put more in there. And in the Senate bill, we ended that. That's $5 billion a year that the Postal Service could save. So it is an issue that concerns me very much. We've worked on. I'll find out more about the status of these negotiations probably next week.
Audrey in Richton Park, Illinois. You're on the air with Senator Sanders.
Good afternoon. My question is this. Currently the gluttonous members among the wealthy, they're allowed to play these semantic games and call themselves job creators. Who will put them in their place to remind them that they are business owners who must hire people in order to keep up with the demand for their products or services? These guys are employers who, without their employees, would not be able to properly supply the demand for what they sell, and would not be able to prosper, therefore, if their companies fail to keep up with the demand for their products and services.
Well, Audrey, thank you very much. I think you've made a very, very important point. These guys cannot produce their products or provide their services without workers. And they don't make any money unless people purchase the products that they produce. And I get a little bit tired of some of these guys thinking they're God's gift to the human race as they shut down plants in America and move to China. as they stash their profits in the Cayman Islands and not pay their fair share of taxes to the United States, as they try to destroy unions who are organizing workers. So I think Audrey's point is very, very important, and that is that we understand that these guys don't make any money without the people who produce the products and services and people who purchase their products.
Robert in Mission Viejo, California. We just have 2 minutes to the end of the show, or to the end of this hour. Robert, a quick question?
Not a problem. It's my theory that in order to create real change, you have to create space for that change. So my question is, Senator, can you think of one measure by which America and probably the world wouldn't be better off without the Republican Party?
Well, I'll tell you what I do think, Robert, in seriousness. If you understand that in this last election, the Republicans had huge support from billionaires, that their friends own the media, that they control 90% of talk radio, that there are parts of this country where working families don't hear one progressive idea on the radio or local television or local newspapers. Add all that together and they still lose an election. It just goes to show you how far out of touch their ideology is with what the American people want. And I've said it before and I'll say it again. In my view, there is no state in America, not the reddest of the red states, where people believe that we should give tax breaks to billionaires and then cut Social Security, Medicare, Medicaid, and programs for kids. I don't think there is a state in the union where people believe that, and that is exactly what the Republican Party wants to do. So I think our job is to educate, to organize. I think we need a 50-state strategy which takes progressive ideas into red states where right now they are unchallenged. And if we do that, I think we can create a permanent progressive movement in this country which will make government respond to the needs of working families and not just millionaires and billionaires.
It seems like there's about 2 square blocks here in D.C. and a couple of square blocks in Wall Street where they do think that.
That's right, Tom, and that is the truth. And what happens is they come up with an idea, and because they have zillions of dollars behind those ideas, you just saw the Heritage Foundation just hired my good friend, not really my good friend, but my colleague Jim DeMint, who is extreme right-wing guy.
Yeah.
The Heritage Foundation is going to be funded by corporate America, as is the Cato Institute and all these right-wing think tanks. They got the money, and they own a good part of the media. And we just have to educate and organize and fight for our progressive principles.
Amen. And thanks so much for fighting so hard for all of us all these years and for the great work that you're continuing to do. Senator Bernie Sanders, thank you.
Good. Thank you, Tom. Take care.